Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And today we are giving our first impressions of Sail Legacy. And there's a lot of ground rules to get into this because this is a legacy game. So let's start with the first ground rule.
Alex, let's open the box and show them.
The first ground rule, Meg, is...
We can't show you.
No spoilers.
We can't show you anything.
The very first ground rule is going to be no spoilers in this review, which is also why these are some of my least favorite kinds of videos to do, because I'm going to tell you all my thoughts and impressions.
We're here for vibes.
It's vibes. I can't tell you anything. I can just tell you, did I like stuff? Did I not? So ground rule 1, no spoilers. Ground rule number 2, this is a prototype. All rules and components have to change, and we'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Ground rule number 3, I guess related to the prototype part, is this is going to be very different than what you see already. This box is going to be much bigger.
I was going to make sure we could say it. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is 25%?
Well, yeah, we can say
This was
that.
a very early part of the game, so we only got to see a taste of it for everything they have planned.
This box was chock full, completely packed. I mean, you could fit something in there, but it's a packed box already, and it represents the first arc of the game, and that's 25% is what we were told as far as, what we have, our first impressions is based off the first quarter of Sail Legacy, which means what you play, and I guess what we play when we have this later, will be 4 times as long as what we got to play. So not only prototype, but we only got to experience a quarter of the game, and the box you see here is not the actual box. This is what we have for our prototype. Your box is larger. The other box is larger. But with that said, as far as the game, I'm going to loosely talk about what Sail is.
This box is going to grow.
This box is going to grow. I'm going to talk about what Sail is as a general concept, because Sail itself is an original all-play game. This is the legacy version of it. So as far as Sail, because I could tell you about that, and I don't have regular Sail here, I'd show you, but Sail is a 2-player trick-taking game. The general idea is you have 2 players cooperatively trying to work together to get your ship from the start to the end. There's a bunch of other things going on in it, but the general idea is you're playing tricks, and the tricks you play are going to have actions on those tricks, and then if you can line up your actions, it matters the cards you play as well as who wins the trick as you try to guide your ship from the start all the way to the end. So it's a cooperative, a degree of, a little bit of swapping at the beginning of each round, then going through the tricks and trying to work your way to the end.
And I would say for Sail, that is something you can check out now. So if you are intrigued, if you're like, I want a new legacy version of something, Sail is, one of the all-play square boxes that you can pick up now. So you could try that out if you want to see what the system is like.
Now, Sail Legacy, before we get into our thoughts and opinions and all that, or the vibes, again, this is all vibes. Before we get into our thoughts and opinions and vibes, Sail Legacy takes that core concept of a 2-player trick-taking game and makes it into a grand legacy system. And one of the things that's hard to wrap your heads around to a certain extent is the small little Sail game versus me telling you that this box is a quarter of the full game, because you're going to be going through a whole chunk of scenarios, a lot of scenarios. You won't be going through all the scenarios either. There's a degree of things that could be cut off or lost along the way, but you'll have a somewhat unique experience, and someone else is going to have the same experience, but not all players are going to have the same experience, depending on what they win, what they lose, what pathways they choose, what scenarios they end up skipping as they go through this arc of the entire thing. So very small 2-player trick-taking game, very large, giant 2-player trick-taking legacy system. That's what Sail Legacy is doing. I can't go into more detail than that, because that's where we get into the no spoilers part, where I told you. I said no spoilers. Nothing that's happening in this box am I going to...
I do think this isn't a spoiler, but if it is, cut it out. But based on what you just said, I just want to add the descriptor that I do think the table presence is not too large. I don't think it asks too much of you that...
I mean, it is larger than Sail.
Right, it is still more than Sail, but just in general, loosely speaking, of how it feels, it's not like a crazy big game on the table. It does have a lot, though.
Well, I should note that the maps we played are getting larger.
Oh yeah, the maps are getting larger.
So maybe it is too large. We don't know. Our table presence wasn't too large.
I also, again, don't think this is a spoiler. I think it's okay. But the pieces are kind of, I don't want to say modular, but it's not like you're playing a board game where you're set up to a huge game. You can have certain things in certain areas that you're referencing. I think you can, you can play it in a lot of places, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Definitely not an airplane. Definitely not
an airplane, but you could bring it on like a camping trip or something. That could be very fun.
Anyways, with
especially
that
if you're on the water.
From there we move into general vibes. Meg, what are your thoughts on Sail? The original
so
Sail.
Nervous.
The original Sail.
Oh, okay.
Nothing here.
Sail I enjoy. I really enjoy cooperative trick-taking. Okay. I know that can be something that can be done very wrong, and not always fun, but when it is done well, I do enjoy it, and I think cooperative is always a great way to teach people things like that, especially if they're not familiar with trick-taking. So I think that's just like a really strong aspect, that it's engaging and cooperative.
Yeah. For me, I thought the original Sail was fine. And that is relevant as we dive into our thoughts on this one. But I thought the original Sail was fine. I had fun with it. I was not overly impressed with it. It didn't catch me. Like, All Play has a lot of small box games. Some I like more than others. Sail was one that I was like, this is fine. This is like, I'm playing my cards. We're getting to the end. It does the job to an extent, but I was not wowed by it. And I do know that Sail is a more popular all-play game in general, so it has resonated with a lot of people. For me, it was fine. Sail Legacy. Sail Legacy, this is going to be a little tricky to talk about because, again, we can only talk about vibes. It's going to be so hard to be like, we liked it, we didn't like it, all that kind of thing. But as far as vibes go, I'll start by saying I liked it. I liked Sail Legacy. We'll get more into some degree of vibes soon, but like I overall liked the experience. We went through, again, it's hard to like practically count because I have to like there's some degree of branching, but we went through roughly 9-ish scenarios, something like that. Depends on how you count certain things. And I had fun with it. I am happy to start again from the beginning, which I will be doing when I get the final copy, and I'm happy to play through the full thing. Scenarios generally last in the range of, I'd say, between 30 to 40 minutes a piece. It can definitely fluctuate. You can have a little faster, you can have a little slower, but somewhere in that range. Box says 45. I think in general, most of our scenarios were a little faster than 45 minutes. I'm happy to play through the entire thing because I liked what this game is doing. And the tricky part is how to tell you what I liked about what it was doing without telling you what I liked about what it was doing.
Yeah.
But Meg, how do you feel about it?
Like, if you guys are watching my face, I just kept, like, thinking of a thing and then being like, that's a spoiler.
Can't say it.
And then something and then describing it, and that's a spoiler. So I guess that's something that is really good, that I want to talk about a lot of things. There are a lot of things that I do want to say and I can't, so at least know that we've only played so much of the game, and there's already a couple things that I really enjoyed. I should
note, we will be sending this video to All Play to make sure we didn't cross any lines. So if there were bleeps at various points in the video, or if there are bleeps going forward, that's what happened.
But I think this is fine. Everything I say is going to be prefaced with that. To compare it to other Legacy games, I think that it delivers that type of experience really well. That if you do play a lot of Legacy games, you can be familiar with some of the things that it's doing while it still really surprises you in other ways. So I think just if you typically enjoy Legacy games, I do think this is going to do the things that you like about those. Is that a spoiler?
No, that's a fair. Again, we'll just bleep or cut what we need.
Vibes wise, it is on vibe with Legacy.
Yeah, I think to talk about what you mentioned, like obviously a good comparison would be Ticket to Ride and Ticket to Ride Legacy, Ticket to Ride Legends of the West and whatnot. And I think that's a similar arc. If you've played Ticket to Ride, and if you've played Ticket to Ride Legends of the West, Legend of the West the entire way through is Ticket to Ride, just with a whole lot of other things happening, some of which you may have expected, some of which are a little more out of left field, some of which feel in line and feel like a natural progression, but a lot more things happen along the way. That's kind of what's going to happen with Sail Legacy. Like, you start off and it's Sail, and then you keep playing and it's still Sail, but like other things too. Again, can't get into it. What I can say is that part of my problem with the original Sail is it felt very straightforward as far as what the game let you do. It felt like it was in a small box and it never strayed from that small box, which again, lots of all-play games do that, and some I like what's in the small box, some I want them to stray. I feel, for me personally, I always wanted Sail to stray from that small box. I don't know if I ever knew that I wanted it, I just knew that I was like fine with it. And once you stray, what?
I want a Lure Legacy.
A Lure? Lure Legacy? Oh my gosh, that is not going to be a
We're on
Legacy
like
game.
a boating ship.
Yeah, what happens?
We're going to send this to All Play first.
Yeah.
We're going to see the suggestions.
Design it. See what happens.
All right.
But anyways, I always wanted to stray from the small box, and Sail definitely strays from that small box. It adds things that you might not expect and mix up the way you approach the game. Things that, again, it's possible to talk about things. It adds a lot of stuff that were fun for me, that made me look forward to kind of constantly completing games so I could do more of the things that I liked that it was adding to the system. This is going to be bleep. This entire video is going to be bleep.
This isn't going to sound like an April Fool's video.
It is an April Fool's video. It's trying to be like, well, the problem is the alternative is us saying like, hey, here's Sail Legacy.
I do have another legitimate point that I think is spoiler free.
Okay.
Again, with the Legacy idea, something else that I also really appreciated, and this is, again, only the prototype version and a different box than what it will be and stuff, but I think that it was organized very well and very beautifully. Like, there is detail throughout everything, and even the organization, it's designed really, really well and very beautiful. That I think that everything, it is one of those games where sometimes you can have games that are a little bit more plain or things that aren't as special, and then some games take a lot of care to customize everything down to certain aspects. So I think even like the organization system and keeping things secret until you access those parts, it's secret up until you find out what it is. So I do think that that piece was, I just appreciated that. I think the component quality, even things that you unlock, the component quality is very nice. So yeah, I think it's really well done.
And to that end, I guess I could say some general legacy concepts. Legacy games, almost by their nature, add...
No, I think we shouldn't.
No, legacy games by their nature add new rules. Otherwise, I don't know if you can call it a legacy game. And the structure of legacy games, for me, it's always been a little bit, how do I appreciate the balance of new concepts versus constantly learning and interrupting? Because that's the thing for me. Like, in general, you have to learn new stuff. So you walk in with this, and then you're growing that as you go through it. And so if you spend more time learning new things than playing new things, that's not fun. If you spend, or at least not fun for me, if you spend a ton of time constantly interrupting what you're doing to do legacy things, I personally find that not as much fun. I will say that for me, the balance of how quickly you could pick up new things that the game was throwing at you relative to then enjoying and experiencing and incorporating those into the experience, I thought that was an excellent balance. Things were very quick and easy to pick up. Again, without getting too much into structure, I'll say that as you're going through the experience, it'll be like, here's something new to do. And then it'll also be like, and now you can reference this in this section of the rule book in different ways, like to go more into depth. I very rarely needed to read this. I would say 99% of the time, I was able to read this and understand what was happening, and then once in a while I would have a question and go read this because of something that needed to be addressed. It's a little vague, but I guess the point is that it was able to deliver new concepts very quickly and concisely, such that I could dive into and experience those concepts and reference rules if I needed more out of it. So great job there. I thought that they did a good job of, again, complicated, interruptions to the flow of the experience relative to interruptions in between game experiences. I thought that was an excellent balance as well. I generally have not loved legacy games where you're constantly interrupting your in-game experience. And I'm not saying there's none of that. I will say that the relative balance felt like I was able to play, enjoy, and benefit from the game without constantly feeling interrupted, while also still having surprises thrown at you that didn't necessarily take away from the experience. Again, I'm sorry for all the vagueness. So overall, that kind of arc I enjoyed. So I enjoyed the fact that the game went out of the box. I enjoyed the general flow of the legacy experience and the way they gave me... Like, I like legacy games. I think legacy will always make a game better if handled well. You can't just, like, make something legacy without putting work into it. But if you put the work in, if you do the job, I think legacy makes the game better. This makes Sail better for me in terms of letting the game grow, in terms of handling legacy the way I personally prefer it to be handled. And again, that's with only going through a quarter of the experience. I'm very intrigued to see what, like, one of the challenges with covering a game where you haven't played the whole thing is, I assume, this is an assumption, purely an assumption, I assume that the game will continuously throw things at you the entire way through. I think it would be an interesting game if you're like, okay, and now you've seen the first quarters where you learn all the stuff, and now we just do that again for the next 3 quarters. That would be weird. And if that happens, that would be very deflating. But assuming that doesn't happen, assuming we do have a continuous arc of things being thrown at you that constantly mix up the experience, then this does a lot, but does so while allowing you to manage it well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that aspect a lot, that this is going to be a like slightly weird comparison, but for a regular game, if you took a game that usually builds like something like deck building, everyone starts off with, like, you know, the same 10 cards, very low level cards, and then you're gaining things that you start working toward these really big, huge turns. And I feel like legacy games take that idea, but spread it out throughout the campaign, so that you do start off really little and you're learning your things and you're getting a handle of all your abilities, and by the time you hit the end, you should be feeling that arc of, like, I am unstoppable, look at these things I can do, and then something hits you that makes you feel like you're stoppable. So yeah, I'm really excited for how this began, because I think that the real surprises and the real quirkiness and things that are going to be exciting are going to be around, like, maybe 70 to 80% through, and then you really start seeing the payoff of choices you've made a long time ago and things like that.
Yeah. there's some few more things I want to say, but I'm not going to because I don't know it's allowed, and I have some borderline things that I'm not gonna say more things. I guess I'll go into final thoughts. Unless you have anything else you want to add, I'll go into final thoughts. Again, it's tricky.
This can be my final thought if you want me to do mine
Go ahead.
first. So I finally just wanted to say that I think for people that do enjoy legacy games, and sometimes you are a 2-player household and you play a legacy game that's built for, 3 to 4 players optimally, sometimes the things that you do, you get locked out of choices. And this is a 2-player legacy game that the pacing is really, really well, that everyone's getting everything. And so if you normally do play 2 players, I think this is a lot more satisfying than taking something like Clank Legacy and trying to only play 2 people.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
For me, final thoughts on Sail Legacy. Final first impressions on Sail Legacy, because again, only played a quarter of the game. I think that they did a very good job taking the core experience of Sail and making it, better is the wrong word, but I'll certainly say better for me. They certainly made it better for me by taking that experience and giving a lot more fun things added to that experience and constantly evolving that experience. And to me, they did a great job balancing the core structure of what Sail is, while also throwing things in that you may not have anticipated, but still feel like they work well within the system. I mean, nothing that I anticipate, I guess, but I'd say that some things feel like, oh, that makes sense, and other things feel like, oh, you went there. Overall, I thought that the first quarter of the game was a really good tease of wanting to get me to play more of it. I think it was pretty straightforward. I think the rules were well organized. I think the legacy aspects were added well, and I am excited to see not just how we can again, I can't say some spoiler. There's things that I still want to do from even the first quarter that I need to play more in order to explore. So I want to see even those things to be able to do more of the stuff that I know is there, as well as being able to play more to see what else is added to that experience. The only complaint I'll say that I have, the only complaint, and this is the nature of playing the first quarter, is that I do think how to put this? Okay, I'll put it there's 2 complaints. The 2 complaints that I have.
Is that there isn't more?
Well, no, that's inherent, I guess. I'd say that complaint number 1 is certainly there were some new concepts that were added that felt like they were on training wheels, and so I didn't get to necessarily fully flesh out what that experience would feel like once it's not on training wheels, because we only just got it added. So, and that's an area where I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want it to feel like a challenge, and I assume it will, but we only just, got exposed to that new concept, if that makes sense. Again, it's very vague. Anything that's bleeped out gets bleeped out. And the second thing is, the second thing might be a spoiler, but again, it'll get bleeped out if it is. I do think there are times where the narrative wants things to go a certain direction, and therefore there might feel like there's a choice when there really isn't. And while that doesn't really bother me, I can see some people being frustrated by that. It's a little vague. This whole entire little section might get bleeped out, but I did feel there were a few times where it feels like you have agency, but you really don't. And most of the time, that's not the case. Like, I don't want you to feel like this game is on rails. It's really, really not. But there were specific moments that may have been on rails while allowing you to think they weren't, if that makes sense. Those would be my only 2 complaints. And one's a complaint for me. The other is a complaint for potentially others. Like, I don't actually mind that aspect. Past that, as far as final thoughts go, I liked it. I want to play it again. Tentative rating would probably be a 4 out of 5 with the potential that it would grow. I don't think it would get less than that, because I think any game that I've already played 10-ish times and I'm prepared to dive into for another 40 again, it's hard to rate that lower than a 4, because I want to enjoy it. Depending on what the game system does, I could see that growing a little bit. Like, I know Ticket to Ride Legacy has been like a 5 out of 5 for me, and like Legacy games in general can be pretty solidly up there. But again, partial experience, and Ticket to Ride Legacy was definitely not a 5 out of 5 after the first few games, so it took time to get there. So that's where I am. I like Sail Legacy. I'm very happy this exists, and I want to play more. Those are my final thoughts. Wait, your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have more thoughts.
Cool.
I did really enjoy it, and I think it is one of those games that we played through all of it, and I'm excited to start over and play through it again. Yeah. So let that speak for itself, but I am really excited. I did think about it, and I'm going to hold off on talking about any rating or anything like that, because I think it's just not fair until you play through a lot more on a Legacy game.
In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And have a good one.
Bye.